ready to go, Lori.
Hi guys, welcome. I'm Lori Himmelsbach and I am one of the owners of the Kentucky Millstone located in Butler, Kentucky. We've been here for about 2 years, but I have been teaching for a very, very long time. So I've taught everything from, I first started out teaching yeast and sourdough class up in Cincinnati. I have also taught the artisan bread classes down in Louisville, Kentucky. Now here at the Kentucky Millstone, we offer classes on introduction to pasta, introduction to yeasted breads, lots of sourdough classes. We don't offer a macaron class because of the facilitation of like all of the mixers and things like that. So this is a very unique opportunity that you all have. And so a big thank you to Kenna for arranging this for you all, because this is a once in a blue moon experience for you. So just in case you're joining us now, this is the introduction to macaron class. And we are going to, some of you are going to be baking along with me. So I will kind of pace myself to go with those that are baking, kind of like how the class is going to go today. We're going to gather all of our ingredients up. And then we will, I will demo how to mix the macarons in the mixer. And then we are going to fold them with the almond powder, the almond flour and the powdered sugar. And then they're going to have to rest for a little while. So we're going to let them rest until they get a skin on the top of them. And then while they're resting, we're going to whip up a buttercream to go inside of. And I'm going to show you how you can take this one buttercream and make lots of different kinds of buttercream for your macarons. While some of you were waiting, I was showing lots of different videos or lots of different pictures of the different macarons that I've made. I didn't realize I'd made so many. I do about 1 or 2 a week because I enjoy making them. They're very, once you get the hang of it and you know the secret and you practice a bit, they are relatively easy to make. They don't take a whole lot of time, but they are.
All right, Lori, we lost you for a minute. All right, guys, I think Lori disconnected. I don't see her on anymore. Let me message her or call her. That was weird. Just went off quick.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, somewhere you disappeared.
We had a small error there. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah, so I was showing a bunch of you the photos of all the different macarons that I've made over the past couple of years, and I didn't realize how many I had actually made. So if you go to my Instagram or my Facebook account, you get to see lots of different inspiration. I actually gather my inspiration from Pinterest usually, or just Googling macaron ideas. So like in the Christmas, I'll write, I'll type in holiday macarons. One particular great resource is called Pies and Tacos. And she has some excellent resources on macarons. That's all her website is about, is macarons. And so once you learn the basics of macarons, it really opens you up to doing a lot of different things. So here are some of the ones that I'm doing for our Valentine's Day. So we're going to actually sell boxes of these guys. And so they're little conversation heart macarons. And then we've got some different ones here with sprinkles on them. So once you learn like how to make your regular macarons, then you can vary out into doing like shapes and things like that as well. All right, so if you guys are ready to get started, I am going to get started with you. So those of you that are cooking with me or baking with me, Kenna has got your recipe for you. So she always does such a nice job putting them together and very thorough. So two of the things that I learned in chef school, one of them was the mise en place. So those of you that watch the cooking shows, you'd be like, oh, I know what that is. But those of you that don't, it's a French term for everything in its place. And so as a chef and baker, we do a lot with mise en place because it's very important to stay organized, have all your ingredients ready to, if you're in the middle of baking and you're like, you finally find out you don't have any chocolate chips, or if you're in the middle of baking and the phone rings and you can't remember if you put the salt in, Mise en place is an excellent way for you to stay organized and to be able to make sure that your recipe turns out like you want it to. So the other thing I learned in chef school is that if your recipe doesn't turn out like you wanted it to, then you just change the name. And I actually still use that to this day. It's a very useful tool when you're, going through a pound of butter and it doesn't quite turn out like it's supposed to. So I did some shortbread cookies and they were not like shortbread cookies, so we just called them butter cookies. So feel free to use that great bit of advice. So we're gonna, to go through our mise en place, we're gonna kind of go through the recipe and talk a little bit about it before we get started. So you're gonna need 180 grams of almond flour. I actually use the Blue Diamond brand almond flour from Amazon. I think I've seen this at Costco as well. So it's a big bag, 3 pounds. I make a lot of macarons, but it does keep for a while. If you're going to keep it for a really long time, I would probably throw it in the freezer or the refrigerator, as the oils and the nuts will go rancid and you'll start getting an off flavor. So don't feel like you can buy that 3 pound bag and in 3 years make macarons with it. So you definitely do want to take care of your products. So I already have my 180 grams weighed out. And then we've got 240 grams powdered sugar. I'm using the Domino brand. This is a huge bag from the restaurant store that we go to at 7 pounds. We go through a lot of powdered sugar. This is actually pre-sifted, but for our purposes, we're going to sift it again, because one of the main things you want to make sure with your macarons is that it's the almond flour and the powdered sugar are totally mixed and they're very smooth. Because when you go to fold that into your egg white, you don't want big clumps of almond in there. So I've already got our powdered sugar weighed out too. So those of you that are baking with us, you can be weighing these out as I'm talking about the ingredients as well. Then we're going to want a pinch of sea salt. And so I've got my salt sitting here, and hopefully I'll remember to put it in. Adding salt to anything is going to really round out that flavor. So the original recipe that that this is based on did not have a salt in it. I started out using kosher salt, and I noticed it was a little bit spotty because those salt crystals didn't have time to dissolve. So we're actually going to use a finer sea salt. Not a big fan of iodized salt because it has iodine and all the other chemicals and stuff in it. So our sea salt is just a plain, really fine sea salt. All right, we've got 140 grams of egg whites at room temperature, or roughly 4 large eggs. I have mine in the other room. They're in the proofer, so they're warming up. I've had them in there for about a half an hour. And so what our proofer is it basically brings things warmer. So those of you that, are baking along, hopefully they're at room temperature. If not, it's not a game changer. You'll be okay. 80 grams of sugar. So I have that weighed out as well. I'm not going to show you the bag because it's a 50 pound bag. So trust me, this is our sugar weighed out for 80 grams. And those of you that have baked with me before, you know that I'm a big fan of weighing in grams or the metric system. And the reason for that is because it makes things a whole lot more uniform. So my cup of powdered sugar and your cup of powdered sugar are going to be totally different if we weigh it with a measuring cup. But if we weigh it with a gram scale, that 240 grams is going to be the same no matter where we weigh it or who weighs it. So to make things uniform, especially in a baking position, I do find that a gram scale is super useful. They're not expensive. Again, finding them on Amazon or even at Walmart has them. So just any kind of gram scale is going to help really give you a kick towards being a better baker. So food gel or coloring agent. If you're planning on coloring your macarons, we definitely want to do that. I'm going to grab my color for you. We are using pink tonight because it's almost Valentine's Day and we want pink. This brand is from Chef Rubber. If you are like doing a deep dive into baking and you're like, oh, I have to buy everything. This is a really cool website. They have a lot of professional ingredients. So this one is specifically formulated for macarons. So it says color for macarons. That's one of the reasons I like it. It's because when it's baked, it tends to hold its color a little more true than say your Wilton gel colors. So, don't feel like you need to have, and this is a dry color. And so don't feel like you have to do this, but they have a lot of cool colors, and it helps the color stay a little more true. All right, so to get started, the directions say: prepare your mise en place, have ready 2 baking sheets lined with parchment, place your macaron template beneath the parchment paper, and then place the piping bag with a tip in a 4-cup container, weigh out your sugar and set it aside. So we've got our 2 baking sheets here already lined. And so if you say, oh no, I don't have macaron templates, what do I do? So I will show you. So this is the size of the templates. I use the smaller circle. And I think somewhere, Kenna, we wrote down what the size of that template was, but if not, we can revisit. Let's see. Yeah, so on the back it says tools. It says if you do not have a template, something to create a 1 1/4 inch circle and a pencil. So I measured this guy before, and the base of it is about the size of the circle. So to make your own template, you're going to take the hand down. Hand down. Yeah. So to make your own template, you are going to take your circle and basically just draw around it. And I think I have roughly 30 of these. So it looks like it's 5 by 6. And I'm not going to draw 30 circles for you guys, but you get the idea. So if you do not have a template, or you're just, wanting to test this out, see whether you really want to do it before you invest in the template, just remember when you go to use your template to flip it over, because you don't want to pick up those pencil marks or the permanent marker marks or whatever. So you want to flip that over and use the back side of it. You can put them off. And you can also off online as well. So there's templates online. So we're going to do a couple circle templates, and then we're going to do some of those conversational. So these were printed off. I'm not sure which website, but these are quite smaller than the ones on Pies and Tacos. She does some larger, and I wanted smaller ones. So you can use the template circle as well if you don't feel like drawing.
Excuse me, are questions allowed?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so what was it that you were using to make the circles? Was that like a little medicine cup, or what was that?
This is a restaurant solo cup, so it's a 1 ounce cup. So you basically thing that's roughly the size of and it doesn't have to be exact, but you do want a circle. We're not going for squares here. So something about that size. So it's 1, and I believe 1 1/4 inches is what we had measured to be.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Lori, will you please repeat the food coloring brand that you used?
Yeah, so this one's called Chef Rubber, and they have a website, and I think it's called chefrubber.com. So we're using pink. I actually use the Wilton brand as well, but again, this one is specifically made for macarons. If you do decide to go onto the Chef Rubber site, they have a lot of different colors, and it can be quite confusing. So just make sure that you're using a water-based coloring instead of an oil-based coloring. So like the oil-based ones would go for chocolate. And then this is our Wilton brand that we use. So it's just, and we bought a larger one because a lot of red, and you can find that like at Walmart. All right. Let's see. So it says for powdered macaron coloring, add it to the egg whites before whipping. So I'm going to add mine because it's a powder to the egg whites before I whip them. For the gel-based colorants, we're going to actually add that after the egg white's been whipped. So we're going to do that before we add our almond and powdered sugar. So we're going to get started on the baking part, or the mixing part. So the first step is to combine your almond flour and powdered sugar in the bowl of the food processor. Process at least 1 minute, moving the processor from side to side, and then strain it through a fine strainer to remove larger nut particles. add the salt and set aside. So if you do not have a food processor, I would just try as hard as possible, like maybe use a whisk and try and just whisk it as much as you can, because what you're trying to do is get the powdered sugar thoroughly incorporated into the nut powder. So you're not having clumps of nuts and clumps of powdered sugar. We want it to all be very uniform when we fold it into our macarons. So we're gonna hop over to the food processor. And we're taking our powdered sugar and our almond flour. Joy's gonna follow me. Joy is our guest videographer today. She is the inspiration for our macaron making. Joy loves macarons, so we actually traveled to Columbus to take a macaron class from the Macaron bar, and it was a great experience. I would highly recommend it if you want to take your macaron making to the next level. The Macaron bar has some excellent classes. So we're putting in our powdered sugar. And we're putting in our almond flour. All right, this is going to be one of our noisier classes because we're mixing and processing and things like that today, and we don't normally do that in class. So you guys are going to have to bear with the noises. Actually, I'll have Joy mute this while I mix it, and then I'll catch up after our mixing part. And you can get it. So that's a good start, but we can see down here, there's a little bit of powdered sugar. So normally I do really large batches of this, but you really want to put your almond flour on the bottom because sometimes that powdered sugar gets stuck down there. So we're just going to give it a little scrape.
Hey, Lori, while
Do that.
you're scraping it, I had a question.
Okay.
Can you mix the almond and powdered sugar ahead of time? And if
Oh,
so, how long ahead of time?
All right, let me grab my my example for you. So I was not planning on covering this in class, but since you asked, this is our which is our macaroni. And so I'm not a big fan of doing dishes. And so what we'll do, we will actually mix up about 6 batches of macaron powder at one time. So you see this one's dated 1/8. It's just powdered sugar and nuts. So again, it's going to keep about the shelf life of your nuts anyway. So you are fine to go ahead and mix that in advance. A month is not an issue at all. So my recipes here at the bakery are calibrated on the mix. If you have questions on that and you're like, wow, I really want to bake 200 macarons, Kenna can give you my contact info, and I can, tell you how to make the macaronis. But yes, you can definitely make that ahead of time.
Go ahead.
All right, again, you ready?
Love you too. Bye. Be careful.
It's interesting how she treats her food processor.
Why?
Yeah, make sure you guys mute yourself too. And yeah, she is shaking her food processor around to make sure it mixes quite well.
All right, so take a look here. And you can't tell where the almond is and you can't tell where the powdered sugar is. So that's what we're trying to do, is just thoroughly incorporate. We got a little bit there in the bottom, but it'll mix up when we dump it out. All right, so we have our fine mesh seed here. And we're just gonna dump our powdered sugar mixture. And you can either tap it if you want, but like that takes all day. I basically will just press it through. You can actually use a flour sifter for this as well. So if you're wanting to avoid flour contact, Joy is gluten-free. So we're very careful about trying to make sure that we don't cross-contaminate. So if you're doing that, you want to make sure you wash it before you add the flour. the almonds and powdered sugar. And then if you are avoiding nuts, you probably wouldn't be making macarons. But if there are nut allergies, you want to make sure you wash everything thoroughly and avoid cross-contamination as well. And this, as much as this is an extra step, it is highly recommended to do this step because that fine flour is going to make a really big difference. I'm going to use that spatula. That fine flour is really going to make a difference when we're folding it in. And you can see there's not much in the way of nuts that remain in the bottom of it, but you never know, if you're not using a real high quality nut brand, it's quite possible that it's chunky. And so you do really want to be careful with that. And there was a time when you didn't have easy access to almond flour. So you'd have to grind your own nuts and everything. And that was a lot more important than being able to sift all those particles through. So we have our almond and powdered sugar. And we're actually just going to move that back to the smaller bowl because we're going to use this bigger bowl to mix up our macaron base. All right, and then it said, remember your salt. So it says a pinch of salt. We're doing 2 pinches of salt, which is actually a double recipe. All right, so now we have our 140 grams of egg whites. Kenna, do you need me to demo how to separate the eggs?
Probably most of them will probably be separating them as you talk. So maybe that would give them time to get their eggs and get their eggs ready.
Okay, I'm gonna hop off and wash my hands real quick because I got nut powder on them, and then I'm gonna separate a couple eggs just to show you the different ways that you can do that.
And then hopefully those of you that are baking along will get you enough time to make sure your flour and powdered sugar are ready to go and sifted. And know that at any time you can unmute yourself and ask a question or write it in the chat.
One.
Wait, I'm gonna get some more.
Nope. So those of you that are not familiar with the Kentucky Millstone, we are a farm to table cafe. So we do use our local farmer's eggs. He lives about a half a mile from our house. And we try and utilize as many local products as possible. We also attend a couple of different farmers markets. So we really, we use like only local pork and beef in our meatball subs and things like that. So we do really try and support the local farmers. So 2 different ways to separate your eggs. So I'm gonna give a close up on that part. So one is going shell to shell. And these are really thin skins, so they break quite easily. So that is a very important part, is that you want to make sure there is no yellow in here. So if you're a novice at cracking eggs, you may want to separate each of them separately in case you do happen to get some yolk in one of them. If there's any fat at all in your egg whites, they're not going to whip well. So it's very important to make sure there is no yellow in there. No yolk. So the other way is going to be hand to hand. So if you don't feel confident in being able to separate with from shell to shell and you think it might break, very simple to just let the white fall through your fingers, and then you've got your yolk. You see how pretty and yellow that is. And again, we talked about how important it is to make sure that, how important it is to make sure that there's no fat in your egg white. So I've got my egg whites here. And I'm just going to double check and make sure that I use the appropriate egg whites, and I put them in my refrigerator. I'm like, I might not have grabbed the right ones. So if you do have that scale, here's another reason why we love our scale. So I'm going to take an empty container, this exact same container, and I'm going to press 0 or tear which makes your scale say 0. And then we're just gonna switch these 2 containers out. And this one says 80 grams. Well, the good thing I checked it, because we're needing 140 grams. So maybe I did grab the wrong one. All right, so we're gonna actually add some of those cold whites in with it. So it's a good thing I actually measured that.
Hey, Lori, I thought you said you put them in your proofer.
Joy grabbed them for me, but evidently when I put them in the proofer, I grabbed something else out of my refrigerator. Or when I was leaving them out, I was probably hangry or something. So I guess normally I would not remeasure them. So evidently someone was telling me that I needed to. So good catch there. All right. So I did want to show you like though how nice the scale is to be able to use for a purpose like that. All right, so we should have 140 grams of egg whites, or roughly 4 large eggs. And we were talking about how important it is to make sure there is no fat in your egg white. All right, so our mixer, I know where they are. They're in the mixer bowl. There. All right, so maybe they're not. All right, I'm losing my mind.
I have
Sorry.
a quick question.
Okay,
On my eggs, I actually did measure it with my scale. I needed more than 4 eggs because I was only about 120 with 4. How big of a deal is that? I mean, I was using large eggs, but I was using store-bought eggs.
Yeah.
So I went ahead and did a 5th egg and added about half of that white, but is
I
that a
would.
big deal or not?
I think so. Yeah. So a lot of times I'll do rough, but in this particular purpose, I'm at 144 on mine. But if I were any further than that, I try and pull a little bit out or add a little bit too. So I try and get as close to that 140 as possible. But yeah, if you're at 120, I would definitely add another 20 grams.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so I found my mixing bowl, and we're back to the egg white. But what I wanted to tell you about was we were talking about how important it is to make sure that there is no oils, egg yolk in here. But the other thing we want to be sure is that your mixing bowl doesn't have any oily or buttery or fat residues in there. And one of the ways that you can do this is you can take a little bit of vinegar. A lot of times I'll use white vinegar, but we're going to use some apple cider vinegar just because we had it. And then you're just going to kind of rub the inside of your bowl. And this just makes sure that, if you were making frosting and you had some fat hanging out on there, that it kind of just neutralizes that fat. So we're just going to kind of have a little bit of a cheat to make sure that there's no fatty residue in there. And I think there might have been. So that was another a good thing to do. All right, so we finished step 1. We set aside our almond flour and powdered sugar. So step 2 is place the room temperature egg whites in the bowl of stand mixer. Start whisking on low speed until frothy. With the mixture still running, gradually add the sugar. Slowly increase the speed to high and continue until stiff peaks form. So we're going to stop the video or stop the mixer at different points. And I want to show you what you're looking for. Hopefully we will not go too far. If you go too far, it's going to look like clouds. It's going to be like fluffy clouds. While turning, so then we're supposed to remove into a large bowl. While turning the bowl, add half of your almond flour mixture, fold it in with a spatula. Once incorporated, add the remaining flour mixture. So we're going to walk through that kind of step by step. So we're going to place our room temperature almost egg whites into the bowl of our mixer. And we've got our whisk, and we're going to start whisking at low speed until frothy. And I'm going to take my sugar over there and my spatula because we're going to scrape it down. And again, part of mise en place too is keeping a clean workstation. So I do try and clean up things as I go along. Everything that I am using is going to go into the sink and I'm going to rinse it off so it makes it easier when I finally do the dishes. And you just want to try and stay as organized as a chef and baker as you can. All right, Joy's going to mute us while we're mixing this, and then she'll unmute as we are. Yeah.
somebody asked a question about the food color. Is this when you would add one or not the other?
Yes, and we're going to do that right now.
The good thing you tell us because they keep you on track.
It is. Yes, I appreciate you guys.
But if
You
it's
guys-
one kind, you're not adding it until after. If
Yeah,
it's
so that's
the powder, you're adding it as you go. Or
Yeah, so
at the beginning.
you're gonna wait. But with the dry powder, we're adding it. And it is a little tricky to figure out what colors you want with the chef rubber. All right, so we're gonna start mixing, and Joy's gonna take a video of our mix. All right, so if we take a look at these, we see they're frothy. We see there's some residual coloring in there, which is fine. It'll get mixed up when we get further into it. So at this point, you're really just kind of trying to break the egg whites up before you start adding the sugar.
So hopefully you guys can see she's slowly adding the sugar as she's going. She didn't add it all yet.
Yeah, and then also I have that at about speed 4 right now. So I'm going to continue to mix it at about speed between 4 and 6. So it's not all the way on a high yet. Once I get all the sugar added, I'm going to scrape the bowl down, and then I'm going to crank it up to high until we get to what we're looking for. So we're just going to scrape that down just to get all the sugar off the side. We're going hot pink today.
Mm.
And it'll actually change color again when we add all the other ingredients to it. All right, and then I'm going to crank it up to high.
Sarah will ask that question in a minute when she's done whipping, but I believe if we're adding the gel color, we add it at the end.
All right, so we've got, this is our start. And I want to show you the steps as we go. So you see that's got no peaks at all. So we're going to keep going. All right, so we're checking in again. And this is going to be your soft peak. Because it doesn't quite stand up, but it's much more firm than the last time. You want to make sure at this point that you're not walking away from your mixer and not taking a 15-minute or even a 2-minute phone call, because we're probably about a minute away. Okay, we're closer, but not there yet. And normally I would not, or am I still there? Yeah. Normally I wouldn't stop it that many times, but I do want to walk you through what we're looking for. All right, so if you look down in here, we see there are some stiff peaks there, but we're not to where we want to be yet. So one of the telltale ways that I can tell is if I scoop up the whole thing, it's still kind of like wimpy a little bit. So about another 30 seconds, and then we're going to be where we want to be. All right, so if we scoop our bowl up and we've got all sorts of, and like the majority of it sticks with your mixer, and then you've got all sorts of like little whippy parts hanging out, this is what we're looking for. So for those of you that it's not getting thick yet, I would say keep beating it and keep an eye on it. Just keep working with it. You can't overbeat it. So you see this is very smooth and pretty. If it starts looking like clouds and it's all chunky, you've gone too far and you can't go back. You're better off just starting over. So what is in the bowl is our 140 grams of egg whites, and then our 80 grams of sugar and the dry color. So that's all that's in here right now. All right, so we're gonna walk over.
Hey, Lori, there was a couple questions while you were mixing and were muted. One, if you were adding the gel color, when would you add it?
Yes, so you're gonna actually add it at this point. So if this was white, I would dump it in my bowl. And so I'm gonna demo the dumping part. Do we have another color that's complementary to pink that we can add to it too?
Yellow,
I'm not sure what color it would turn out if we added yellow to it.
lighter pink.
All right, so we got our bowls clean and our egg whites are in here, and you see they're stiff, so nice. So at this point in time, if you wanted to add some more color to it or add color to it, this is where you could add your gel color. We do purple, like it's darker. So we've got a little bit of neon food coloring. So we'll just throw a little bit of neon in here too, just to kind of show you. So this isn't even a gel, this is just some neon purple. So anybody guess what color these are going to be, but we're doing this for the sake of education. All right, so we've got our color here. So now we're going to switch to the large spatula. And I like the large flat spatula, and you notice how large our bowl is. This is super important to work with a large bowl, so you've got plenty of room to maneuver. So this is our powdered sugar, our almond flour, and our salt. And we're going to dump about half that in. And then this is the technique we're going to do. So we're going to cut and kind of fold over, cut. So we're basically cutting in that almond flour. So if you need to scoop it up a little bit and pull it over. The first part's kind of the hardest, but we're constantly rotating it and cleaning our bowl up at the same time. And we're folding that almond flour over and then cutting it in, cleaning up our bowl, cutting it in, rotating. So this is not really folding. We're more cutting that powdered sugar in. And you can see right now it's kind of clumpy. And so you see why it's so important to make sure that that powdered sugar is mixed well. All right, so at this point, we have the majority of it added in. It's not smooth, but you don't see any more white streaks. So we're gonna add the rest in. And we're gonna cut and scrape our bowl, cut in, fold it over, cut in. And so at this point, if you had the food colorings, you'll notice that those are actually, you know, coloring your batter right now. All right, so we have all of the coloring, all the white is gone. So all our powdered sugar and all our almond flour is not showing. But the next spot is to make it smooth. So I always like to clean my spatula off. So that's why I recommended 2 spatulas.
Someone says still working on trying to get mine to thicken all the way.
Yeah, some are few working on their eggs, I guess.
Yeah, you are. Keep going with it. My mixer is a pretty high powered mixer. So if your mixer isn't as high powered, if you're using a hand mixer, I'm not even sure how well that's going to work for you. I would just say what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to fold, and then I'll put it in the piping bag, and we'll wait for the rest of you guys to catch up. And so that way I can answer questions as you're mixing. But the most important part, one of the most important parts, and why macarons are so tricky, is because you do have to get those egg whites to the appropriate spot. So I showed you all the different stages. If you stop too soon, your egg whites are gonna probably deflate in the oven. If you go too far and you get that clumpy, cloudy stage, it's not gonna hold up either. And so the goal is that the egg whites are actually gonna work as your leavening agent to make that macaron rise. So it's super important, and that's the tricky part, is to get those egg whites to that point that I showed you. So if you're struggling with it, you may have to go back and watch the video again and just kind of study where it is. A couple of the pain points, it could be that you had an egg yolk in there and it just that added fat did not allow it to whip properly. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the second part of our folding. So there's 2 techniques. The first one was we were cutting and folding that the powdered sugar in. Now we are actually going to add some texture to it and try and smooth it out some. So you see right now it's clumpy. Okay, so notice the difference. So right now it's just clumpy. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue to work with it until we get a nice ribbon. And how I do that is I'm lifting it up and pulling it over on itself. And at some point I'll cut through the middle just in case I didn't happen to rotate my bowl as often as I should. So we're really trying to work all of the egg white and make it very fluid. And so you see there's already there. So on occasion, I will cut through the middle, but for the most part, I'll go around the outside of the bowl. I'll lift it up and fold it over. And that's one of the reasons why a large bowl is so important. And so again, then I'll cut through the middle. I'll rotate around just to make sure I'm not working the same spot again and again. So we see how nice and fluid that is now, and it went from clumpy to fluid.
You don't, you
And
need-
we don't want to work it too long. So this is about what we're looking for, is if we lift it up and it falls off in a ribbon, that's what we want. So I'm going to go ahead and put mine into my piping bag with the tip. And then that's going to give the rest of you guys a chance to catch up. So one of the ways you can do that is I use like a 4-cup measuring cup. And I stick the bag down in it. Pretty cool.
Up to this one.
And then I use the bag to clean off my spatula. So I have really large spiking bags though, so lucky.
Talk about tips. That's
So
what
we've got a tip down at the bottom of this. This one actually is a little bit smaller than I normally would use because I'm going to do some hearts. So I'm going to show you guys the tip that I normally use for this. And I'm not sure what the diameter on these is. I can measure them millimeters if you want. But those are the ones I normally would use. But this one's going to be smaller because I'm doing a heart. All right, Kenna, where are we?
How's everybody doing? How are our egg whites coming? Do we have our flour mixed in? Those of you that are baking along, kind of give us an idea of where you're at. Or are you with us? I see a spatula going up, baking the ribbons. I see arm muscles working. Emily, how'd your egg whites do?
Sorry, I had to turn my mixer off so I could talk to you. It's coming along, but it's just taking a little longer. I think it's like 3/4 of the way there, so.
Okay. A lot of people, some say they're folding.
Am I still on? You got me.
you're on.
So I cut the tip, and I'm not used to using the tiny little one. So I cut the whole bag off the tip. So I'm gonna rebag it. So
I've
to
done
do
that before.
I'm gonna put the tip down in here. And then I'm just gonna drop the piping bag down in it. So I'm just showing you what not to do.
Several people are folding. Says that one person said it looked grainy when they're folding.
Probably will because it's got that almond, the almond in it. And so the almond is grainy, but what we're doing is we're folding where it's chunky and then we fold until it has those ribbons. So it is still going to be grainy because it has the almonds in it.
Great. And then somebody asked, could you explain again going from lumpy to smooth? And that was turning it over and over in the bowl. Right?
Right. The difference is when we first start, we put in half of it and then we kind of cut and fold over and then cut and fold over. And so it's really awkward to get the almond and powdered sugar cut and folded in. But what we're really trying to do is kind of cut it and fold it until you don't see any of that white anymore. And then we're going to do that fluid folding motion to kind of like lengthen the egg white. And so we'll lift up and we'll pull it across. We'll lift up and we'll pull it across. And we'll scrape our bowl down and then we'll lift up and we'll pull it across. And so what we're really trying to do is just really elongate it. And so this is not like your gluten strands. You're really just trying to smooth out the lumpiness of the original folding part. So while you guys are finishing up the folding part, realize that there are two different ways to make the macarons. There's the French technique and the Italian technique. Which one are we doing?
Italian, I think.
I'm not even sure which one it is we're doing because it's the only one I do. I did start off doing the other technique. And what that is it requires you to bring your sugar and water to a certain temperature, and then you dump it into the egg whites and you whip it. So I found that one a little more challenging, and I thought that the method that we use produces a perfectly successful macaron by using this method. Joy, where's our book at? Our macaron book.
I have no idea. I know.
We have a macaron book here, and we'll kind of keep looking for it. It's right up there. Can you grab a ladder and see? We're gonna pull the book down off of our bookshelf. So we have some nice bookshelves up there now, if you can see them. So Joy is gonna grab our macaron book, and we'll tell you which method we're using. I think it's the opposite of our method, isn't it? You do the same method? Yeah, because I think we started out using that method. So this one's called Macarons for beginners. It's French macarons. So I think, let's see real quick. Yeah, so it looks like it's the same method. Yeah, so we are actually doing the French method. So the Italian method is where you're gonna heat up your sugar, and it's a little more challenging. And anyway, this is a really good book. So if you really like making the macarons, it has some really good flavor combinations. It talks about buttercreams and things. I only use the recipe that I've given you for all of my shells, pretty much across the board. So we'll see a green colored shell and be like, oh, it's a pistachio. No, it's just a green shell. So, you know, hers, she does dive a little more into the colored shells, but for the ease of use in the cafe, we just stick to one recipe and just use it across the board.
French is cooked.
The French one cooked? All right, so Joy Googled it and she says the French method is cooked, and I guess we were doing the Italian method. So I'm the first to tell people that, like, I am not an Italian grandma. I'm not like a macaron savant. I am self-taught in a lot of things, and this is one of them. So that is why sometimes when I sound confused, I am, and that's okay.
Never mind. It looks like mine was.
No, Google doesn't know. Google doesn't know either. So all we know is it makes really good macarons. So we have a dough scraper here. The flat edge is going to be used for scraping flat things. When we're in baking classes, we use our rounded edge to scrape the bowl. So when Joy gets back, I'm going to show you how to scrape your pastry bag to keep it nice and tidy. All right, so we're going to use our flat edge, and especially since I'm working with two pastry bags here. I think actually I'm just going to make my life easier and remove the one pastry bag too. I don't really feel like messing with the other one. See, I'm giving you guys that are working with us time. Showing you what not to do. And you can also use like the side of your table too, the side of your table to scrape it down. So are we good to start piping, Kenna?
Yep, I think so.
All right, awesome.
Did everybody catch up?
Yep.
Like it never happened. All right. So now we're gonna work on our piping technique. Again, we're gonna tidy up our piping bag. I'm gonna work a little better on cutting the smaller part of my tip off. And now it's too small. It'll be all right. All right. So now for piping. Are we gonna go here?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you should have your template or your hand-drawn template or your printed template. And to hold the piping bag, I will twist the top. And so I'll grasp it with one hand, and then I'll have the top part here. And this is a learned skill. It does take a little bit to master. We are going to press down to the first circle and then kind of whip off.
Lori, there was a question while you're piping, if the colors will that color be the color it'll stay through the baking process?
Yes, for the most part. I still struggle a little bit with my convection oven. It gives it just a hint of bronze, which I like to think is more like gold, but I haven't quite figured out like how to keep them from turning brown. There's a fine line between making sure they're properly cooked and keeping them from getting brown. So that is a bit of a struggle even after 2 years. So, you know, if you go to bake yours and they turn brown, just be warned that it is a bit of a learning curve to find the proper temperature for your oven. So I'm gonna tell you, I bake mine at around 300, but mine's a convection oven, it's a professional oven. So, you know, this is gonna be trial and error for you. So the next, we've got them piped. The next part is gonna be, to release your frustration from the day. So we're gonna actually bang the pan 20 times-ish. What we're trying to do is release all the air bubbles. So Joy's gonna mute it so you don't have to listen to me banging. You ready?
So if you had a bad day, this is good.
But we're not seeing her.
Did they not get me?
Who did you not see?
I wasn't seeing the gal who was banging the pan.
You
I'm
couldn't
seeing
see
you.
Lori? You couldn't see Lori?
Right.
Pan.
Isn't
It's
she,
going back to you.
isn't it?
It's on you right now.
It's on me?
Yeah,
Sorry,
that's been happening.
It's probably
I'm
because
not-
we were.
I'm not sure why.
Here we go.
She should be.
Now she's
pinned.
back.
Okay, I pinned her. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna do another pan, so don't worry, you didn't miss anything. But do notice in between this pan and the next pan I'm going to do, that the circles have spread out some. So that's kind of what we're going for. So I'm gonna pipe another one and then maybe we'll leave it on so you can hear me bang it. We won't lose you. Joy said maybe we lost you because we muted ourselves.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
All right, so again, I'm going straight over top and then just kind of pulling to the side very quickly. And there's a little bit of a tail there, but we're gonna bang the pan and make it go away. And the goal for that circle is to make sure they're all the same size. And you really don't need a tip here if you don't have one. I do like using them, but it's not necessary. All right, so let's take a look at the two of them back to back. And I'm gonna turn my oven on. Well, Joy's showing you. So you see these are spread out. So I'm gonna bang my pan 20 times. You guys will have to listen to, and you can put a towel underneath it too if you want to. I'm gonna grab me a towel. I kind of like the noise myself because it makes me feel like I'm actually doing something. All right, so that was 20-ish. And you can see now that they spread out. There aren't too many air bubbles. If you have a whole lot of air bubbles on yours, you can just take a toothpick and kind of pop those air bubbles. I don't typically do this step because I don't really notice that it makes a big difference, but it really, I guess, depends on how many air bubbles you have. All right, and then if you have a silicone template, I always suggest pulling it out. We've thought that it actually makes a difference in the baking. So I do not like to bake with the silicone.
Lori, I know you said you turned your oven on to 300 degrees. What should those that doesn't have a convection oven turn theirs to?
I would go right around 300 because I think mine bakes a little hot. So anywhere between like 290 and 310. So 300 is a good number.
So if you
All
haven't done so already, you might want to preheat
Sure.
your oven.
Did you have a question?
No, I was telling them to go ahead and preheat their oven if they haven't done so already.
Can I jump in with a question again? Sorry to be difficult.
No worries.
So I was the difficult one in the email with the nut allergy that we decided to substitute with corn flour,
Yes.
and I'm attempting to do that right now. I'm to the part where I'm folding and I'm trying to get it in that nice ribbon consistency so I can get it in the piping, and it's a bit thick.
Just keep
Um,
going.
So are
Should I just keep going? Is it gonna take
Are-
longer to get it to thin out, or?
Show her your thing again.
so are you using corn flour or corn powder?
Corn flour. Is that a no-go?
No, it should be corn flour. It's just corn flour is hard to get. So I'm making sure that I know what product you're talking about.
Okay. Yeah, it is corn flour.
So that's what the almond flour looks like to begin with as well. So you gotta keep going with it until it reaches that ribbony consistency.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Thanks for the encouragement. I'll keep going.
And that the corn flour acts a little bit differently as well. And so if you're doing something like the hearts, or we did gingerbread men at Christmas, and we did snowmen. So you basically just find a template and then just pipe within the template. And so the goal is just to make sure you have a template so they all hopefully stay the same size. So now remember, when you're piping these, that half of them are the top and half of them are the bottom. So don't feel like you're going to end up with a million macarons because you're only getting half as many as you pipe. So again, we're going to do our pan banging. Yeah. So then if you do these and they're like, well, they don't quite look like hearts, you can kind of like tease it a little bit so it has a little heart point. And again, I'm going to pull out my template because we don't want to bake it. And I've still got a little bit of batter left, so we're going to do one more.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have 3 baking pans and I have a little batter left. I was gonna use a 4th, but it's a non-stick pan. Would that be a bad idea?
As long as you have the parchment, I think you're fine.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, I'm using the flat edge to kind of get every little last bit of the batter. And at this point too, I typically will just trim the top of it off to make my life easier. And then that way I'm not working with such a huge, and it won't flop over and hit my macarons. And
She makes piping look easy.
like I said, I make these almost every week for the last 2 years. So a lot of practice. And then something I did, we do want to do here before we dry the macarons is we want to go ahead, if we want to use sprinkles, like you saw those really great pearlized pink sprinkles on top that I showed you at the very beginning. We're going to go ahead and add those now. So as soon as I get done piping these guys, we're going to add some sprinkles to the round ones. And then if you get some odd shaped ones, those are great to sample and make sure that you actually did it right. And when I get to the end, I kind of just like push it into the bag to try and get every little last bit out there.
What's your trick to for getting batter into the piping bag?
To getting batter into the bag we showed you before, you're gonna use your 4-cupper and put the bag inside of it. And then kind of fold the bag over. And then I typically will put it there and I'll hold it up and dump it into the bag. And so this holds my bag for me. Typically, I'd be a little more aggressive with my banging, but I don't want you guys to have to listen to me. All right, so we're gonna make sure we remember to pull our templates out. And then I'm gonna save these until next year. So remember, you can hold on to them. And then again, remember that you, half of them are gonna be the tops and half are gonna be the bottoms. And so if you touch it right now, mine have already started to dry out. So mine are not gonna take the sprinkles too well, but we're gonna try it anyway.
Someone said, how do you keep it from coming back out of the top of the bag? My guess is you just need practice.
Yeah, so a couple of different things that you can twist it like I did. That works out real well so that it keeps it. And then a lot of times too, we'll put a rubber band around the top of it too, so it doesn't sprinkle out.
Or use a bigger bag.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have nice big bags, so that helps.
And then your dough scraper works really well at scraping it back down in the bag. That's a good tip.
So we've got some different colors of sprinkles here. These came from Michael's and it was 50% off. So I got me some, I love my sprinkles. I have a whole sprinkle drawer. So here's the sprinkle drawer. Even all of them. We're gonna use some of these pearlized ones. These are really pretty. These are the ones that you saw before. Pink on pink. All right, we're gonna leave that last stroke because we'll do something different with those when they bake. All right, so these guys are gonna go in my proofing hot box. So basically what it is it's got a lot of airflow going through it, and it makes it quicker to dry them out. I used to put them in a warm room and it'd take like 20 minutes. It'll take me like 5 minutes probably to get these to where they're dry enough to bake. But what we're looking for, if I dip my finger in this now, okay, I'm ruining that particular heart, but he'll be okay. So that's showing you that it's still wet. And I'm going to show you what it's going to look like when they've dried out. So we're going to give them 5 to 10 minutes in the proof room.
Lori, so if they don't have that, they are just letting them sit to dry, or
Hopefully in a somewhat warm spot. It's just going to take quite a bit longer. It could take 20 minutes. It could take 40 minutes.
If you use a fan on, it works really well too. But you don't want to dry them out too far.
Yeah, I wouldn't put like direct fans, just kind of like have it.
An overhead.
So like mine's circulating in there and it's also 77 degrees. And so it's kind of a nice warm area. And while they are resting and getting to where they're firm to the touch, so what we want to do is we want to have it where you can touch it and it feels like a basketball. So it has a skin on it. So we're going to actually make our buttercream while they're drying out. And I'm going to do a real quick cleanup while you guys think of whatever questions you have.
a recap on what she said. So once you have yours piped, you're going to try to set it in the warm place in your house that maybe has some good airflow, because you're going to let them sit to dry. How's everybody doing on their piping? Where are we at? Are we semi-caught up with Lori? And can get yours to a spot. Emily, how's yours doing?
I got to a point where I can do the piping and now I'm just making a big mess.
Everybody else doing okay? I know some of you are just watching, but I'm just trying to make sure those that are baking along are keeping up.
Yeah, and while we're making the buttercream too, it gives you the time to finish up piping and it'll give you a lot of time. And even if we get to the point where yours take 40 minutes and mine are already baked, it will give you the time to see how I'm decorating them, how I'm piping the filling and different things like that as well. So Kenna, are we on a spot to start with the buttercream or do you want to wait till they're finished piping?
Is everybody good if we go on with the buttercream? Can you listen while you pipe?
If
Yeah,
they're white,
yep. I think we're good.
okay. Any other
Yeah, I'm
questions?
good.
Yeah.
All right, the question is what to do with your egg yolks. Well, we finished for those guys that are piping. Lots of different things you can do with your egg yolks. Pound cake, creme brulee, cookies. So here at the Millstone, we actually use egg yolk in our chocolate chip cookies. And so we always have a whole bunch of egg whites left over. A lot of times we'll have so many egg whites left over, we'll have to make like an egg white cake. And then sometimes the girls will take them home for like omelets because we go through a lot of egg yolks. All right, so we're gonna start on our buttercream. There are a lot of different buttercreams. This one is just an American buttercream. It's basically butter, confectioner, sugar. My favorite is a Swiss buttercream. It's a little more complicated because you're gonna bring your sugar and water up to a certain temperature. And then you're adding that to your egg whites and you're whisking them. And then you'd have to find out what to do with more yolks. But I think the flavor of a Swiss buttercream is just like more melt in your mouth kind of texture. It's a little more challenging, but definitely if you get into macarons, you know, you may want to like foray out into different types of buttercreams. This one's super cool because it's a very generic vanilla buttercream. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to make the vanilla buttercream, but I'm actually going to remove half of it and add some raspberry powder to the other half. So we're going to do a raspberry buttercream and we're going to pipe it inside those pink shells. So this one, again, from lovely Amazon, it is an organic raspberry powder. I really, really like it. You can see my poor bag is well used. But it's got great raspberry flavor. It's basically freeze-dried raspberries. And so you get a lot of flavor. It does tend to get clumpy if you save it too long, but you could take this vanilla buttercream and do like a blueberry. So you can flavor it with anything. You could put some melted chocolate and do like a chocolate buttercream with it. So lots of different options. I'm always a big fan of utilizing one recipe to make lots of different things. And so with this recipe, we're using a half a pound of butter, but you could use a pound of butter and you know, do 4 different buttercreams, and then you can freeze the buttercream. So, you know, if you're already thinking towards next Christmas, or if you're thinking towards Easter and you're like, I want to do Easter macarons. So I'm going to pipe them in the shape of Easter eggs, and I want to fill them with vanilla, chocolate, raspberry, and blueberry buttercream. And so I'll have all these different flavors. And so it's super simple because let's say you want to do 2 different colors of shells. And so at that point, what we would do is we would take the macaron batter, and once we have the powdered sugar and the almonds folded into it, before we start doing that long folding, we would separate it into 2 bowls. And then we would put, say, our pink in one bowl and our yellow in another. And then we would fold that long folding separately. So again, to repeat how to separate the batter, you would take it all the way to the point where you fold it in and cut in that powdered sugar and almond flour. And then you would separate it into 2 bowls and put one color in one and one color in another. And that's going to make it a whole lot easier to fold it in 2 different colors. Another way to decorate your macaron is to leave them white and take your gel coloring with a paintbrush and paint the inside of your piping bag. And so like if you go back in some of my my posts, you'll see some swirl macarons. And so what happens is when the white batter goes through, it pulls the color from that painted bag and put the swirl on the macaron itself. So there's lots of different ways to get different color macarons. So any questions on that part?
Yeah, could you repeat what the raspberry flavoring is that you're gonna use?
So this one's called Food to Live. And it's just dried raspberry powder. And so we're gonna make half of it a white buttercream, and then we're gonna do the other half in the raspberry powder. Remember to stay hydrated. All right, so we are going to start on our vanilla buttercream. So we have 227 grams of unsalted butter. And those of you that have not had class with me before, the reason we're using unsalted butter is two reasons. One, salt is a preservative, and so they're able to keep a salted butter on the shelf a whole lot longer. So if you buy unsalted butter, it's going to definitely be fresher. And the other reason is because different companies salt at different levels. And so it's very difficult to tell if you change from one brand to another brand, how salty that butter is going to be. So we always like in baking to start with unsalted butter. It's just a clean slate, and then we salt it to our taste. So we're going to do 283 grams of confectioner sugar. And it does say sifted. And mine is not sifted, so I'm going to be a good girl and I'm going to sift it because I've been having issues with my powdered sugar, confectioner sugar. We've got a quarter teaspoon of salt. That's sea salt. My 2 tablespoons of heavy cream is in my refrigerator. And then we've got a teaspoon and a half of vanilla extract. So the process is in the bowl of a stand mixer fitted with a paddle attachment, or in a large bowl using a handheld mixer, beat the butter on medium speed until completely smooth. Mine's been in the peripheral, so it's super soft. So if I push my finger into it, you can see the indentation of my finger. I would not try and make a buttercream if you just pulled it out of the refrigerator. It's going to be hard to like soften. So if you like needed to make it right this minute, I would suggest, maybe doing a defrost to get it to soften up a little bit. Let me check those. So once it's completely smooth, reduce the speed to low, gradually adding your confectioner sugar, beating until all the sugar is completely combined. And then we're going to add in our salt, cream, vanilla, and beat until smooth. So super simple, super quick. I'm going to grab a spatula, and then I'm going to grab the sifter. Oh. All right, Joyce convinced me to do less dishes. So I'm going to do it in the same one I did the nuts in. It's a little full, but we'll make it work. And Joy just went and tested the macarons. She felt them to see how tacky they were. And they still have just a little more time on them. So you do want to be cognizant that we still have the macarons sitting somewhere. All right, so we have our lovely sifted powdered sugar. I'm gonna wash my hands real quick. All right, you want to follow me over here? And our little KitchenAid is getting a handy dandy workout. So I burned the motor out on my other KitchenAid, making brioche. And I actually sent it back to, actually this one I burnt up. And I sent it back to KitchenAid, and they charge you like a $60 service fee to look at it. And then it ended up being like $120 to fix it, and they counted the service fee towards that. So if your KitchenAid ever has some issues, don't think you have to get rid of it. You can actually send it back to them and they'll check it out for you.
And then you get a year warranty.
Yeah, and it does have a year warranty on it too, so it gets a little bit of a workout. All right, we have our paddle. So we're gonna paddle this.
Lori, I've heard rumor that you can call KitchenAid and turn on your mixer by the phone and they can tell by hearing what's wrong with it and if it can be fixed.
We thought, but mine was so dead, it wouldn't have made a noise. It was really dead. Don't try and make brioche in your mixer.
The one we use in the funnel cake trailer, when it bit the dust, I just got rid of it.
All right, so our butter is nice and creamy. Like I told you, mine was already warm. So we've got nice creamy butter here. And then we're gonna add our powdered sugar to it. Did I say add all of it? Do you remember? We're gonna go ahead and add all of it. And we're gonna give it a good, we're gonna start out really low. So don't like crank your mixer on to high at this point or it's gonna like get all over you. And then we're gonna stop and scrape it down because we got some butter caught here. So a good scrape all the way around it. Then I'm gonna drizzle in my cream. Drizzle in our vanilla. And if I were a professional, I would use a white vanilla for that because it tends to color it, but I don't have white vanilla. But I do think like a white vanilla in this will make the color like pop a whole lot better. But I don't buy white vanilla. So again, we're gonna scrape it down real well. And I did put the vanilla, the salt, and the cream in there. And what we're looking for basically is just to get it all mixed up real well so you don't have any clumps of powdered sugar, you don't have any clumps of cream. That's just a nice homogeneous texture. So we're gonna go over here, we're gonna take half of this out. And those of you, we got our parchment here, so we're just gonna put our beater on the parchment so that it doesn't get our work surface dirty. And then we're gonna check our macarons. So what we're looking for is if we rub it, notice it's nothing's happening. It's just hanging out there. So it feels like a basketball. Because you talked about, like somebody said, it's grainy. If you feel a basketball, it kind of feels grainy. It's the same thing. If you rub the top of it, notice there's nothing on my finger. So we're gonna go ahead and put these in the oven. And I'm not sure how the sprinkles are gonna work these guys because these are new. So we'll see what happens. And then I typically will cut all of them just in case like one happens to be on a shelf that wasn't getting the airflow. But they all feel great. Did you turn it off? Cool. All right, so they're all ready to go. So we're gonna put them in our oven. And I'm gonna set my timer for 5 minutes and then I'm gonna rotate them. Because even though I have a professional oven, a professional convection oven, I do notice that it has hot spots and it'll have discolors and things like that.
Someone asked, would white food coloring help?
I'm not really sure because the yellow of the butter, I actually have white food coloring for the macarons to do like snowmen and things like that. And I still can't seem to get that white pop. I've considered buying a white bleached almond flour, which I think would make a difference because you're starting off with that almond hue. But even in this, I think, you know, you're still looking at yellow. So I don't think the white would work. I haven't tried it. I'm really honestly not that invested in making it white. If I was, I'd probably buy the white vanilla, but like it's buttercream and it doesn't bother me that it's the color of butter. I'm gonna grab some piping tips. Sorry, my piping tip drawer and my sprinkler drawer are about the same. I have so many tips, I don't know which one to use. And then you guys saw my bigger piping bags for the macarons. I have to open up a new box on my smaller ones, but these are the smaller ones. I don't know if you can get this particular brand anywhere, but this is what I use here. I get these at a restaurant supply store, so that's a nice size for icing. So we're doing 2 bags. We're gonna do one for the vanilla buttercream and then one for the raspberry. So again, I've got my 4-cup container, put my piping tip in there. I'm gonna fold the top of it down. And then I just let the container do the work for me. So a couple different ways. You can either scoop it into your container like that and let the container hold it. For something that, unlike your macaron batter, because the macaron batter is so loose, but on this one, it's got a lot of stability to it. And so I tend to find it's just easy to hold it in my hand. And this does make a lot of buttercream. So unless you want to sit at night and eat buttercream like you would ice cream, feel free to half the recipe. You can also freeze it. A lot of times, those of you that follow me on Instagram have seen the 10-layer cakes that I do or the random cakes that I make. So a lot of times I'll multi-purpose the icing from the cakes. So like I did a peanut butter cake last week, so I had some peanut butter buttercream. So that ended up in the macarons. So I'm constantly recycling those ingredients into different ones. I didn't want a straight peanut butter icing in my macaron. So I ended up doing a circle of peanut butter icing and then put a dollop of a chocolate ganache in the middle. So we're like calling it a Reese's macaron. So again, be very careful. We are going to cut the tip off. And then our handy dandy dough scraper or edge of the table. And we're going to clean that bag up. And those of you that said you had issues with it coming out the top, we've got a rubber band here, or like the little Pampered Chef clips. So we're just going to kind of twist the top of it. I kind of fold it in and fold it down. And then take your rubber band. And remember, if you have macaron batter, don't cut the bottom out or you're going to be dribbling macaron batter everywhere. And so we've got our piping bags ready to go. And this is real good for like children as well if they're helping you, so it doesn't squeeze off the top. All right, so we're going to do our cream.
And Lori, this is where you could say you could flavor it with any kind of flavoring,
Yes.
chocolate or.
You can add extracts to it. We've got all sorts of extracts.
And you don't even have to use the vanilla either.
So we've got like a maple flavor, we've got a peppermint flavor, we've got rose water, we've got some tutti frutti. So you can use extracts too if you got your vanilla, if you have your vanilla buttercream and you want to flavor it a different way. like in the Christmas, the holiday season, we're using the peppermint. Makes a really good peppermint buttercream. If you want to do nutmeg, add some. If you want to do like eggnog, add some nutmeg to it. You want to take a look? All right, so we're gonna take a look. We have our new holiday pot holder here. All right, so this is exactly what we're looking for. You've got the great feet around it. And then we're just gonna rotate them at this point. We'll talk more about it so we don't let all the heat out of our oven. But this is my favorite part when I open the oven door and I see those feet, then I know that hopefully it's gonna be a success.
Hopefully we did it right.
And Lori, you said that you put yours in for 5 minutes and rotate it. What is the length of time in the oven?
The total length's gonna be about 10 minutes. I'm gonna turn mine down just a touch because I have been having issues with and them turning brown, or bronze or gold or whatever you want to call it. They're just not as clean as I like. So I'm actually testing to turn mine down just a touch. And we're going another 5 minutes right now. Another thing that I have been having issues with is I notice I pull them out and they look absolutely gorgeous. And then 2 minutes later, they're a little bit speckled. Like they're light color, and then there's little pops of dark color coming through. And I think one of the issues I was having is that I was under baking them, because I pull them out as soon as I can to keep the color from turning brown. But I think at the same time they were set, but they weren't completely baked through. So we're gonna give them a total of 10 minutes. We're gonna test them. And if they're still looking good and they're not like browning up too much, we're gonna leave them for another 2 minutes or so. So between 10 to 12 minutes total baking time. And again, that's gonna be trial and error. I'm at 2 years on baking these, and I'm still, as you notice, I'm still tweaking the timing on it. But once you get there, you'll be gold.
And just a quick question. So you don't have an oven as big as yours and you put 1 or 2 pans in at a time. How long will they hold in that state of dry?
They actually will hold really well. So you have time in between. So in that case, if you knew you were going to be baking 4 pans, I might set 2 in a warmer room and 2 in a cooler room. And then, 10 or 20 minutes later, go ahead and move the 2 that were in the cooler room to the warmer rooms, kind of rotate them and time it that way. Make sense?
Yep.
All right. So we're going to add some raspberry. And there is no set recipe on this because we're going to do it to taste. We want it to taste good. So I basically just dumped, and that's probably maybe 2 tablespoons. And then we're going to take it over there. We're going to give it a little beaten. And if you wanted more color at this point, you could add some more of that pink color to it. And again, in an effort to keep our work surface clean, we're going to use our parchment there. Yeah, it's really important to make sure you're scraping down your bowl, because you see right now we've got the ombre look there. So unless you're going for ombre, isn't a bad thing. So this is a bit dull to me, like kind of boring. So we're gonna actually add a little more pink to it. And that pink's pretty serious pink, so it's probably gonna be like super pink now.
But if you didn't have the powder, you could add some kind of liquid food coloring or.
Yeah, I would suggest that. I would not suggest using the dry color that I do. Because it is a water based and we're pretty much dealing with fats. But those of you that know me know a lot of times I don't really follow the rules. So and that's, to me, that's okay if it works for you. So as a baker, you kind of have to find your own rhythm. I did not ever set out to own a bakery. It just kind of happened. And So to be honest with you, a lot of times it's a fly by the seat of your pants kind of thing. And we see what works and what doesn't, and then we kind of improvise. So that's what you have to do as a home baker as well. Much, much better. That's much better than the dual pink we had before. Oh, they're smelling good. All right, let's see where we are on our time. We got 36 seconds. So we're gonna make sure we have some cooling racks ready. Most of the time, I will let the macarons cool directly on the sheet pan they're on. I've not had any issues with them cooling directly on the parchment. I haven't had any sweating issues. I just kind of leave them there, and it does seem to work for me. We're gonna put them on the cooling rack today though, because I want to show you how to ice them, and I need to get them cool so that we can show you. So I think our timer's gonna go off here. This is our 10-minute timer. So I did turn the oven down a little bit, and I'm loving the color of them. Okay, so the one way I test to make sure they're done is I'll peel the paper back and we see how it comes off with very little resistance. Okay, I'm happy with the color, so I'm actually going to throw them in for 2 more minutes just to try and dry them out a little bit. And I think turning the oven down on that is helping me out. I've not been happy with a slight hint of brown. I'm not sure if it will video well enough that you can see, but there's just a little bit of what I call bronze. Can you see it?
Not really.
But it's just got a little brown around the edges. So this is, this is where you're gonna have to test your oven and figure out what you want your macarons to look like. So again, we're folding down the top of the bag, dropping our tip in there, letting our 4-cupper hold it for us.
Lori, I had a question in the chat on, does the summer humidity affect the making of them? Or have you noticed anything?
So the summer humidity doesn't seem to affect the baking so much as it does the drying time. That's where I ran into issues in the summertime. It was taking like 40 minutes and it was just, I never could quite get them to dry out. So I switched over to putting them in the little heated area where I have the airflow. And I think it kind of maybe dries them out, and that's why I've had some success with that. But yeah, you are going to deal with the humidity issues. So that's going to be something you're going to want to maybe test and see how you can get around the humidity, or you're just going to have to time it so that you just have to wait longer. Actually, we're going to give this a little taste, make sure it tastes good. I don't want to put it in my piping bag out and then feel like it doesn't have enough raspberry flavor. Perfect. And that little hint of saltiness makes a huge difference. It really, really rounds out the flavor. All right, we already tested those guys. So I typically will test every tray because they're on different spots in the oven. And that's exactly what we're looking for, is this firm shell here. If you pull it off and there's resistance and it doesn't come off, I would stick them in for a little bit longer. You really want them to peel off, because otherwise they're going to end up losing like the bottom of your shell. Now this is a big recipe of macarons. You can see it makes a lot. You can half the batch of egg white. I typically like to do a full batch just because I think the mixer handles it better. I think it's easier to catch that fine point of exactly where you want the meringue to be. The shells freeze very well. So what you can do is if you have an abundance of macarons and no one to eat them, you can throw the shells in the freezer. Or you can go ahead and make the macarons and throw the macarons in the freezer so they freeze really well.
Or you can give a lot out for Valentine's Day.
Exactly. And that's why I was suggesting too that you can divide the batter into two different colors.
Look really good.
The color on them is really good. I'm happy with the color.
Yeah.
Because I've been struggling with it. All right, so I'm gonna finish filling up my piping bag here. And then we're gonna answer whatever questions we have while the macarons cool down. So be thinking about what questions you have. A lot of times too, I'll take the back end of my scraper and scrape it with the back end, and it gets the bowl pretty clean. I don't like buttercream in my sink to wash. So I do like to make sure I try and get as much of that out. And plus it's dollars. If you don't clean your mixing bowl out well, that's dollars you're leaving behind. And then you end up with buttercream in your sink, and it's not easy to get buttercream out of your sink. All right, so again, we're gonna tidy up our piping bag. And we do have a little bit of ombre there, but it doesn't bother me, I like it. All right, so we have both of our raspberry and our vanilla ready to use. And we're gonna pull a few of our macarons off to let them cool while you guys think of what questions you have.
Lori, if you're freezing just the shell, how long would you recommend?
I think a month work. I haven't had any issues. And all of those non-perils and like what are those things called that go on top of sprinkles?
Neat.
All the sprinkles look like they worked out really well. Really cute.
So if someone asks, can you use pureed fruit, say strawberry for the filling, or do you have to use powder?
Yeah, I think definitely you could use some pureed strawberry in there if you wanted to. I would probably like cut back on your cream or leave the cream out altogether. But yeah, you really kind of just can play around with the icing. It's a buttercream, which basically means the majority is butter. So when it's going in your refrigerator, it's going to set up. The only issue you might find with putting a few fruit puree in with the buttercream is you've got an oil and a water, and if they're not like the right temperatures and everything, you're going to end up with them breaking, which means that there's not an emulsification, which means when you put your fruit puree in with the buttercream, it's going to end up separating. So that might be the only issue that you have. One way to resolve that is to kind of make sure that they're both at the same temperature. And that's why I like a lot of times when your recipe says to make sure your eggs are at room temperature, that's why. I mean, I didn't think it was important until I was like, oh wow, it's curdled. And the reason it looks curdled is because it is. It's not an emulsification. It's not this smooth, creamy that you're going for. And so same with the buttercream is if you're adding that fruit puree to it, it might have a tendency to separate. So you have to be careful of that. But remember, we have our top and then we have our bottoms. And these are going to cool pretty quickly because they're pretty light.
How's everybody else's doing on being dry, or do you still gotta wait? Anybody baking yet?
How's our nut free person going?
Someone's got some done already.
Yeah, I see some held up.
Yeah, that was pretty nice looking.
Mhm.
Your nut-free person is waiting for them to dry still.
Someone says mine are sticking to the parchment.
Yep, you may need to, if you haven't taken them out of the oven yet, you might want to let them cook a little bit longer. Because that's what we were talking about is, there's very little sticking on there. If they do stick, you need to make sure you're cooking them long enough, because what'll happen is your top shell's gonna collapse, or, you know, you'll go to lift them off and they'll, just collapse on you, or they'll be gummy. What we're looking for is, you know, this nice hard shell on top. And then when you break it open, it's just kind of got a soft, creamy interior too. And then we're definitely looking for the feet there. You see it?
So if they're not sticking, or if they're sticking to the parchment and it's brown, you need to lower your temperature a little bit.
Yeah, so this is where you're gonna tweak that oven temperature, and this time it might be, you know, you might have to change the name to bold baked macarons, or
Macarons.
macarons. We've had several macarons.
We've done that for a while.
Yes, yes. So ours did not always look like this. And so it's a very valid point, is that if they're gummy on the bottom, but they're dark on top, the oven temperature is going to be what you're going to want to start tweaking down.
And remember, everybody's oven bakes a little different, so it's gonna be that fine line. You gotta find to bake yours. So if you had them 4 pans worth and you put 2 in at a time, next one, try putting it down a little more or something. We have 5 ovens at work and they all bake different. Drives me crazy.
All right, I'm going to go check out my sprinkle drawer and see what other goodies I can come up with for you. Oh, my, let's do the glimmer powder. And then some gold. Probably some pink in here too. There we go, glitter. Everybody loves glitter. All right. So we got some paint brushes in this drawer.
Thank you.
All right, so now we're gonna put these guys together. So the first thing we're gonna do is, we're gonna go ahead and color those tops that, do not have sprinkles on them. So you can paint on these. If you paint on them, you wanna use vodka or some type of, heavy spirit, and a little bit of food coloring. And then what will happen is the spirit will dissolve, but the color will stay behind. You can actually paint on them. We're just going to use a little bit of sugar art glitter. I mean, like, I love glitter. I love sprinkles. I mean, like, just, they make you happy.
There's a lot of people saying their buttercream is really tasting good.
Oh, yeah.
It's always the best part anyways.
All right, got sparkly ones there.
Lori, our group in Trumbull County is curious about the black cabinet behind you with all the magnets on it.
Oh, so that's my door.
Your door, yeah.
Into the walk-in cooler and my spice shelf in my pantry. And these are all of the coffee shops and breweries that my husband and I have visited. And we've got our local coffee shop, Unataza. We've got Kentucky Women in Agriculture, the Reds. The Spanglish Asadero here is the spices that we use at the restaurant. So just people that are super important to us. The You Are Beautiful brand, you're going to see that a lot. We have a huge sign outside the cafe. It's 16 feet by 4 feet. So we are the representative for the state of Kentucky for the big You Are Beautiful sign. So we've got those everywhere. We've got our farmers market, Heal the World. So all sorts of fun things. Oh, that's what that is.
That's Jesse.
Yeah. I was wondering what happened. All right, so now we've got some glimmer powder. Again, we got that Chef Rubber brand.
That's pretty.
So I find that one of the funnest things is if you have a repertoire of different colors and different, sprinkles and things like that. It just really kind of makes it fun to be creative. Like, I'm not really an artist, so I very loosely call myself a culinary artist. So when I work in chocolate, I tell my husband that it's like a first grader or kindergartner. Like, there's just chocolate everywhere. I mean, they end up pretty, yeah. So I've got, these are my chocolates, part of my chocolates. So they end up pretty, but the whole kitchen is a wreck when I'm doing them. So I've got some chocolate covered cherries, and then these are some hazelnut pralines. So just like you guys, I actually attend classes as well. I attend like the chocolate classes. There's one in Chicago and one in New York. They're slipping my mind right now. And then there's there's a online academy called KISA, so it's KICA. That's where I learned to make the 10-layer cakes. There's just a lot of really cool resources online if you want to kind of educate yourself online as well.
Someone asked, what would make the macaroons split or crack when baking?
Look in her book.
Over
and
or
see.
under macarons?
Yeah. So in this book, did you already put it up? Yeah. You jumped really high. So we're gonna get an answer for you on that. So in the book I was telling you guys about before, she has a list of all the different things that can go wrong, and then she has like a lot of different answers. Yeah, usually her answer is either over or under beat the egg whites. It's pretty much the generic answer. So Joy's getting our book for you, and I'm gonna get these guys ready. Will you highlight these guys? Okay, so shell issues. We've got egg whites won't peak in the meringues. Shell didn't develop feet. The shells are cracked. She says, I think one of the worst feelings when baking macarons is when you open the oven door and see all your hard work gone in an instant with cracked tops. I admit I still get these from time to time because I'm sometimes impatient. There's 3 reasons macaron shells crack. The meringue could be underbeaten to soft rather than stiff peak. The batter could be overmixed, or the shells can crack if the piped macarons were not rested long enough. So again, if you did deal with any of those challenges, I really would first suggest going back and watching the video when Kenna posted it online, looking at those stages of the egg white as it's being whipped. When you're pulling it up, you're looking for all these little, like, you notice the whole thing clumped onto the beater. So that's a lot of it. So I would rewatch that video. And then again, it does take a lot of time and practice. So that's the key, is like, macarons are really hard to make. But once you figure out the little pain points and you tweak all those things, like I said, I've been doing it 2 years and I'm still trying to figure out just the little points. And on occasion too, I'll have someone who don't have feet. The humidity might be around and the egg white will act differently. The food coloring behaves differently in the egg whites. The chickens could have had a bad day and it could just be the egg whites. So, really honestly, it's a matter of sticking with it if you're really passionate about learning to make them.
Someone said, after baking, mine look more textured than yours. Is this not smoothed out during folding? Is the video from tonight going to be emailed to us?
So the question I have is, did you use the same brand of almond flour? So whoever asked that question on the
I think that was
texture.
Sarah, I believe.
Sabrina, did you use the same kind of almond flour?
No, it's let me see the brand. Red Mill.
Yeah, so Bob's Red typically tends to be much grainier.
Okay.
So that might be the reason that you're seeing
Okay.
what is this
Otherwise they look almost the same. They're just a little browner from my oven.
Yeah, and so like he probably is a little more whole grain, and so maybe he didn't blanch the almonds as much before he ground them. So lots of different things that can be at play there.
Thank you.
All right, I have my macarons lined up, and what I've done is I've lined them up according. I'm not a professional either, so I've got some big ones here and some little ones here, and so I'm basically just matching the shells with the size that they are with their little mate. I do tell people I am an artisan maker, so you can adopt that term if you want when we do our our focaccia, they might be Texas size, they might be Vermont size. And so that is one of the liberties I take as I'm an artisan. So lots of different piping techniques we can do here. So we can we're gonna play around with some different piping techniques for you.
And while she's piping, to answer Sabrina's other question, yes, she will get the link to this video. It'll be a YouTube video that'll come either later tonight or tomorrow. It depends on how long it takes to upload, because I have to upload them twice. And the longer they are, the classes are, the longer that takes. So, but you will definitely get it.
All right, so here's some different piping techniques for you. And then I've got some raspberry jam. We're gonna go in the middle. And so like, these are just starter techniques. So, you know, we could go white buttercream with some chocolate ganache inside. We could do some peanut butter inside. You can really get creative with it. And so then when we put our lid on, this is what our finished macaron's gonna look like. Oh, got a little. I like these shells because they're not overly sweet. Because a lot of times you'll get a macaron and all you'll just taste is sugar. So that's what's kind of cool about this particular recipe. And if you're into Instagram and social media posts and things like that, you know, this is where you can get creative with your photos, and you can take, you know, photos of your filling. Because like once they're shut, nobody knows what's inside of them. So, you know, you've got this great, beautiful swirly buttercream, or if you did a multicolor buttercream, it looks great until you put the lid on and then nobody knows what it looks like. So I do, a lot of times I'll take the video or photos of them open. And you can use different piping tips to get different textures. So you'll notice that this texture is different than that texture a little bit. And then different piping there. Yeah, if you want to have a peanut butter and jelly, or, you know, give somebody a sample of, and then you can also sprinkles. We love sprinkles. So you can get super creative with your sprinkles. Now I'm mixing them all up. Or so we got the plain ones finished. And then these guys, same thing. You're just gonna flip them over. And then you're gonna find a mate that looks similar in size. Is it on the macaron? It's on you.
We baked our first pan of macarons, baked for 10 minutes on 300, and they're still sticking to the paper. We put them in for a few more minutes and they're still sticking. Any tips?
Let them keep letting them go another 5 minutes probably. Maybe next time, if they're not turning brown, try increasing your oven temperature. but you're really trying to dry them out. So the main thing was is make sure that you got that basketball feel before they go in the oven. That's super important. And then you'll have to tweak that oven temperature. So 300, when I first started baking them, I was at 325, and then I started reducing the temperatures. So again, it's a really good idea to bake one at a time when you're starting out so you get to know your oven too. So that was a good call on your part, just baking one pan of them.
And someone else says, finally getting some to pipe. We had our stick a long time. We had to use way longer. Does a gas stove make a difference?
Mine's a gas oven, so it shouldn't. Mine is going to cook quicker because it's convection. So if you are using a convection oven, it's going to be, you might want to try increasing your oven temperature.
Yeah. And it's going to be a trial and error until you get a good feel for your oven.
All right, guys. So here's our finished macarons.
And they look so pretty. I can't wait to see all your guys' finished macarons. And as you finish them and you take pictures, to share with me and tag Lori or Kentucky Millstone.
All right, so we're going to try it and see.
Pretty good.
So on your macarons, like, get cracked. You're actually supposed to let them season overnight. So if you really want to eat one now, just like make sure you got a plate underneath you. But what you're trying to do is put them in the refrigerator overnight, and that buttercream kind of hydrates the shell, and the refrigerator kind of moistens it up a little bit, so it has the perfect texture.
Yeah.
But the flavor on them is really good, but they definitely need to sit overnight.
Yeah.
Someone says, if we decrease the temp, should we lengthen the cook time? Ours did start to brown on the edge.
Yeah, so if it's starting to brown and you're at the 10-minute mark and you lift it up and the paper's not sticking to it, I'm still giving mine a couple of minutes because so if we look here, I'm not getting any of those spots I was telling you about. So I'm leaving them in longer, which I think is drying them out. Before I was doing that, I would start getting some dark spots, just like little salty looking spots around it. And I think drying them out, leaving them a little longer. So yeah, definitely if they're turning brown, just tweak the oven temperature down just a little bit, but still make sure you're leaving them in there long enough that they're dry.
Yep. All right. Any other? I'm going to stop recording. I think we got most of it covered. So then that way